Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of English Mastery. I'm Andrew, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Isabela. How are you doing today, Isabela?
Hi, Andrew. I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm super excited for today's topic because it's something that everyone can relate to, family life. You know, the good, the bad, and the downright hilarious. But before we get into all that, let's take a quick break for our intro.
Absolutely. Let's roll the intro.
English Mastery Podcast.
And we're back. So today, as we mentioned, we're talking about families. Families are like a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're going to get. But what about you, Isabela? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of family?
That's a tough one because there's just so much to think about when it comes to family. But I'd say what stands out most are the little moments that seem chaotic at the time, but then turn into the funniest stories later. Like, my mom once tried to bake cookies for a bake sale, and somehow, she ended up making them rock hard. My dad joked that we should use them as hockey pucks, and my brother actually tried. Needless to say, the bake sale was a disaster, but we still laugh about it to this day.
That's hilarious. Hard as rock cookies, that's a new one. You know, my family has its own set of kitchen disasters, too. One Thanksgiving, my dad decided he wanted to deep fry the turkey. We were all a bit skeptical, but he insisted he knew what he was doing. Long story short, the turkey ended up looking like a charcoal briquette, and we had to order Chinese takeout instead. Now, every year, we joke about the Great Turkey Fire of 2015. It's become a running joke in our family.
Oh no. Deep frying gone wrong. That's definitely something to remember. My family is more of the traditional type when it comes to Thanksgiving, we roast the turkey. But last year, my brother, who thinks he's a master chef, decided to try a new brine recipe. He accidentally used way too much salt, and the turkey ended up being so salty that we couldn't even eat it. We had to soak it in water to try and salvage it. It didn't help much, but at least we had the side dishes to keep us going.
That sounds rough. Too much salt can ruin even the best dishes. I can totally see that happening in my house, too. My mom's a pretty good cook, but every once in a while, she experiments with new recipes, and things don't always go as planned. One time, she made a pasta dish with some weird combination of spices, and no one could figure out what it was supposed to taste like. We were all sitting at the table, trying to be polite, but the faces everyone was making were priceless. We ended up ordering pizza that night.
I think we've all had those moments. Family dinners are such a big part of the whole family dynamic, though, right? They're supposed to bring everyone together, but sometimes they just highlight how different everyone's tastes are. Like in my family, my dad loves spicy food, the spicier, the better. But my mom can't handle any spice at all. So every time my dad makes his famous chili, she has to have her own, milder version on the side. My brother and I just sit there and watch them negotiate the spice level like it's a diplomatic mission.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. In my family, it's not just the spice level, it's the entire concept of what a balanced meal looks like. My sister is a vegetarian, but my dad's a hardcore carnivore. So whenever we have family gatherings, it turns into this whole thing where my dad tries to sneak meat into the dishes and my sister is constantly on guard. She'll be like, "Is there bacon in this?" And my dad will pretend to be innocent, but everyone knows he's guilty.
That sounds like something out of a sitcom. Family food wars are the best. And speaking of sneaky, my brother always tries to pull pranks at family gatherings. One time, he switched the salt and sugar jars, and my poor aunt ended up putting salt in her coffee. She took a sip, made the most dramatic face, and then calmly put the cup down and said, "I think I'll stick to tea from now on." We were all trying so hard not to laugh.
Oh no! Salty coffee, that's brutal. Your aunt sounds like she handled it like a champ, though. In my family, it's my uncle who's the prankster. He always manages to do something ridiculous during family reunions. Once, during a barbecue, he convinced my cousin that the grill was voice-activated. My cousin spent a good 10 minutes shouting "grill on" and "grill off" before he realized it wasn't working. We were all in tears from laughing.
Voice-activated grill? That's genius. I can just imagine your cousin getting frustrated. Family gatherings are prime time for pranks and jokes, though. My cousin always tries to outdo everyone with her over-the-top stories. Last Christmas, she told us this wild story about how she got lost in a corn maze for 3 hours and ended up climbing a tree to try and see her way out. We're all pretty sure she exaggerated the details, but it was still hilarious.
Corn maze adventures. That sounds like something my sister would do. She's always the one with the dramatic stories, too. One time, she went on a camping trip and claimed she had a run-in with a bear. But when we asked for details, it turned out she just saw a raccoon. But in her mind, it was the most terrifying experience ever.
That's so funny. It's amazing how stories evolve over time in families. What starts as a small thing turns into this legendary tale that gets retold at every holiday. My grandpa does that a lot. He'll tell us about how he used to walk miles to school in the snow, uphill both ways. I'm sure the story has grown more extreme with each telling, but we love hearing it every time.
The classic uphill both ways in the snow story. My grandpa has a similar one, but his involved catching fish with his bare hands when he was a kid. According to him, he was like some kind of wilderness survival expert. But I'm pretty sure he was just fishing in a pond with a rod like everyone else.
Grandparents have the best stories. My grandma is the same. She loves telling us about how she met my grandpa. It's this super romantic story, but every time she tells it, she adds a new detail that makes it sound more like a movie. Last time, she said my grandpa proposed under the stars, but we're pretty sure it actually happened in a diner.
Diner proposals under the stars sounds like a great mix of romance and reality. My grandparents are the same way. My grandma insists that my grandpa was the most handsome man in town and that all the girls were after him. My grandpa just sits there and nods, but you can tell he's heard the story 1,000 times.
That's adorable. It's so sweet to see how they still cherish those memories. I think that's what makes family stories so special, even the ones that get exaggerated over time. They're a way of keeping family history alive, in a funny and heartfelt way.
Exactly. Family stories are like this living history that keeps evolving with each retelling. And it's not just the old stories, new ones get created all the time. Like that time we all tried to go skiing and my dad, who had never skied before, ended up sliding all the way down the beginner slope on his back. We couldn't stop laughing, and now every time we go skiing, someone brings it up.
Oh no. Your dad on the ski slope must have been a sight to see. I feel like family vacations are always full of moments like that, things that go wrong but end up being the most memorable part of the trip. Like when my family tried to go on a relaxing beach vacation, but it rained the entire week. We ended up spending most of the time playing board games in the hotel room, but now, we look back on it as one of our best trips.
Isn't it funny how the disaster trips are the ones you remember most fondly? My family once went on a camping trip, and we forgot to bring half the supplies. We didn't have enough tents, so my brother and I ended up sleeping in the car. It was uncomfortable at the time, but now we laugh about how unprepared we were.
Exactly. It's those little mishaps that make for the best stories later on. I think that's part of what makes family life so entertaining. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned, but somehow, that's what makes it special.
Totally. And speaking of mishaps, one of my all-time favorite family moments was when we tried to have a perfect family photo taken. My mom had this vision of us all dressed in matching outfits, standing in a picturesque park. But of course, my little brother wouldn't stop making faces. My dad's tie was crooked, and to top it off, a bird flew overhead and, well, let's just say it left its mark on my uncle. The photo ended up being a complete mess, but it's one of my favorites because it perfectly captures the chaos of our family.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the most epic family photo ever. I love how family photo shoots always turn into these mini disasters. In my family, we can never get everyone to smile at the same time. Someone's always blinking or looking the wrong way, and by the time we finally get a decent picture, we're all exhausted. But like you said, it's those imperfect moments that really capture what family is all about.
Wow, I can't believe how many hilarious and heartwarming family stories we've shared today. Families are definitely full of surprises, and I'm sure our listeners have their own funny or crazy stories as well. What a fun conversation!
Absolutely. Talking about families really reminds us that no matter how different we all are, those little moments, whether they're awkward, funny, or a bit chaotic, are what make family life so special. It's the imperfections that make it all perfect in the end.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And before we wrap up today's episode, we want to remind all of you listening or watching on YouTube to make sure you subscribe to our channel, Zeta Bruce. If you're enjoying these conversations, hit that like button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes.
Yes! We'd love to hear from you, too. Drop a comment below and share your favorite family story with us. We might even feature some in a future episode. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, leave us a review. It really helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you great content.
Exactly! We appreciate every single one of you who's tuning in and supporting English Mastery. And speaking of future episodes, Isabela, do you want to give our listeners a little sneak peek of what's coming next?
Of course! Next week, we're diving into another fun and relatable topic, misunderstandings in communication. We're going to talk about all those times when things got lost in translation, whether it's in a second language or even between family members. It's going to be a good one, so make sure you don't miss it.
That sounds like it's going to be a blast. Misunderstandings are definitely something we've all experienced, so I can't wait to share some stories. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to keep this journey going with all of you.
Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Remember to keep practicing your English and, most importantly, have fun with it. Until then, take care.
Bye, everyone. See you in the next episode.
English Mastery Podcast.